Okay, what if I told you that you, a butterfly, and even the bacteria on your keyboard all speak the same secret language? It sounds crazy, right? Well, in this explainer, we're going to decode the fundamental chemistry that powers every single living thing on Earth.
Yeah, I know, it sounds like something straight out of science fiction, but it's a very real question. There's this hidden chemical language, and it dictates, well, everything about being alive. So stick with me, and in the next few minutes, we're going to learn the basics of how to speak it.
All right, so to answer that big question, we've got to start with the basics. We're diving into the world of biochemistry, literally, the chemistry of life itself.
Here's a simple way to think about it. You've got biology, right? The study of life, and you've got chemistry, the study of molecules. Well, biochemistry, that's the incredible place where those two worlds meet. It's the science that's always asking, okay, what are we actually made of at the tiniest molecular level, and how on earth does it all work?
And you know, biochemistry doesn't shy away from the big questions. I mean, the biggest questions imaginable. Like, how does that sandwich you just ate actually become the energy you're using right now? Or how does a signal zip from your brain to your fingertips in a split second? It all comes down to the millions of chemical reactions happening inside your cells, and these are the exact puzzles biochemists are trying to solve every single day.
Now, a field this huge, as you can imagine, has to be broken down into specialties. And when you put them all together, they create something like a detailed molecular map of life itself.
So this science breaks down into some really fascinating subfields. You've got structural biochemists. Think of them as molecular architects figuring out the exact 3D shapes of all the little parts. Then there's enzymology, which studies the tiny engines, we call them enzymes, that make all the chemical reactions go. Metabolism is like the city planning department, mapping out all the chemical highways for energy and building materials. And then you have genetic and clinical biochemistry, which connect everything back to our DNA and, really importantly, our health.
Okay, so that's all the theory, but what about the real world? This is where it gets really exciting. Because biochemistry isn't just something stuck in a textbook or a lab, it is everywhere, actively shaping the world around us.
And I'm not kidding, the scale of its impact is just massive. I mean, look at this. A huge chunk, as you might expect, is in medicine. But its influence is just as powerful in agriculture, biotechnology, and yeah, even in environmental science. Let's actually take a closer look at that.
So in medicine, biochemistry is an absolute game changer. Here's how it works. By figuring out the exact shape and job of a rogue molecule that's causing a disease, scientists can literally design a drug that fits into it like a perfect key into a lock. And that can stop a disease dead in its tracks.
Then you've got agriculture. Thanks to biochemistry, we can create crops that are packed with more nutrients, crops that can survive a drought, or even ones that naturally fight off pests. It's absolutely fundamental to, feeding the entire planet.
And what about biotechnology? Well, here we've basically learned how to harness life's tiny chemical engines, those enzymes we mentioned, to do all sorts of work for us. Ever wonder how your laundry detergent gets out those tough stains? Yep, that's biochemistry in action right in your washing machine.
And finally, it even helps us clean up our own messes. Scientists can actually use microorganisms, kind of supercharging them because we understand their biochemistry, to eat up and break down harmful pollutants in the environment. It's this incredible process called bioremediation.
Okay, so we've seen the big picture, right? But to really get a feel for the power of biochemistry, I want to zoom way in on one single process that is keeping you alive this very second. We're going to do a deep dive into your body's silent guardians, chemical buffers.
So what in the world is a buffer? Put simply, it's a chemical guardian. Its one and only job is to keep the pH, that's the level of acidity, totally stable. And that shock absorber analogy, it's perfect. It just soaks up chemical shocks to stop any wild, dangerous swings.
And this right here is exactly why it's so critical. Look, in an unbuffered solution, like plain water, you add just 1 drop of acid and the pH absolutely plummets. That would be a deadly change for any of your cells. But in a buffered solution, that same drop of acid does almost nothing. The pH stays stable. The buffer is holding the line.
So how does it do that? It's actually a pretty brilliant two-way defense system. See, a buffer is made of 2 parts that work together, a weak acid and its partner base. So if some rogue acid shows up, the buffer's base component jumps in and neutralizes it. And if a base comes along, the buffer's acid component takes care of that. It's ready for anything from either direction. Okay, now I want you to just look at this number for a second. 7.4.
This isn't just some random number. This is the incredibly precise, tightly controlled, absolutely non-negotiable pH of healthy human blood.
And that leads us to a really critical question. What happens if your blood's pH changes by even a tiny, tiny fraction? Well, if it deviates just a little bit, say to 7.3 or 7.5, the proteins in your body start to literally fall apart, oxygen can't get where it needs to go, and your systems start to shut down. We are talking about a life or death situation every second of every day.
And this is why your body is so amazing. It has multiple, really sophisticated buffer systems working around the clock to hold that perfect 7-4 line. You've got the main one in your blood, the bicarbonate system. Then there's another one in your cells, the phosphate system. And get this, even your proteins themselves can act as buffers. It's like having a triple layer of protection.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. This looks complicated. And honestly, you do not need to memorize this. This is called the Henderson-Hasselbalch equation. The only thing you need to take away from this is that this is the powerful, precise tool scientists use. It proves that life's perfect balance isn't just some kind of magic. It's predictable, understandable chemistry. By controlling that ratio of base to acid, you can literally dial in a perfect pH for any situation.
All right, so let's take a breath. We've gone from the huge, sprawling field of biochemistry all the way down to these tiny molecular guardians inside our own blood. Let's just bring it all together now for one final takeaway.
When you boil it all down, it really comes to this. Biochemistry is so much more than just a subject in a textbook. It is the molecular operating system of life itself. It's the underlying code that runs absolutely everything, from how a tiny plant turns sunlight into food, to how our own bodies maintain that perfect, delicate balance. It's all written in that secret language of molecules. So, I want to leave you with the question. Now that you know just a few of the rules of life's chemical language, what questions does it make you ask? What mysteries about your own body or the world around you do you suddenly want to solve? Because trust me, the chemical story is just getting started. Thanks so much for exploring it with me today.